Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me in the locker room. I'm Alan Locher. I'm very excited today. We have two new authors who are, by coincidence, lawyers who have taken their creativity to the written page and have each released their first children's book. Joining each author will be the illustrator who helped bring their characters to life on the pages of their books. My first guest, Peyton Gulley, is a former teacher, current lawyer, and ardent storyteller. Originally from Louisiana, Peyton creates timeless narratives and characters that inspire readers to dream big and embrace their curiosity. He has written countless songs throughout the years, and his new book, Stella and the Dinos Alive in Space, is his first children's book, which he has self-published, and it's out now. Please welcome to the locker room, Peyton Gulley. Hey, Peyton.
Hello. Hi there, Alan. How are you?
Do you notice anything?
I do notice. I like that sticker you have there.
So thanks for being here and congratulations on your first book.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first book and first show ever to go on.
Oh, okay. So virgin territory. Let's go back to your childhood in Louisiana. What was your childhood like since you're releasing a children's book?
I mean, I had a lovely childhood. I have two very loving parents, and was raised in I was raised with an older brother, a younger sister in Minden, Louisiana, which is a small town of like 12,000 people. And where I'm from is a big part of who I am. Even though I live in Los Angeles, I carry a lot of that Louisiana life with me, which is not always reflective of like super LA culture, but has its own kind of vibe. In fact, like my hometown of Minden is a really special place, and the people of Minden have been the biggest supporters, like really blown me away by the number of people who have actually supported the Stella project from the beginning. The majority of them are from North Louisiana, so Stella's hometown is definitely Minden, Louisiana as well.
Were you an avid reader yourself as a child?
I did read a lot as a kid. I was not as much of a sports guy. I was a swimmer, but a lot of my time was spent reading. My mom jokes that I would run away with. I would take a backpack and put like some peanut butter crackers in it and a juice box and like 5 books. And there was this one tree that I would go climb, and there was like a little hook branch that I would sit in and hang the backpack up and just drink my juice box and read books forever. And thinking I'd run away and I was going to show my mom who's boss, but she could actually see me out the kitchen window. Like as she was watching the kitchen. Definitely always a reader. Reading was a big part of my life, and just really, really appreciated stories. Just stories. Appreciated stories, but appreciated the fact that stories like didn't exist until someone took the initiative to pull them for their brain and put them on the pages, and the impact like those stories could have on me. That whole concept was always really exciting to me.
Well, that's my next question, because you talk about Stella being a little dino that made a big impact. Is there a book that you recall making a big impact on yourself?
That's a good question. The books that I really remember reading a lot growing up were Harry Potter, the Harry Potter series. And my aunt, who was also a big reader, she was living abroad, and she stopped over in London and picked up, I think, The Prisoner of Azkaban, like the 3rd book, and brought it to me. She's like, this is some kind of like Harry Potter or something, but I don't know. It's big in the UK. It hasn't hit the US yet. She's like, you can't read it until you get the rest of them. But I think I loved it so much because of exactly that, what I just described, like the depth and breadth of that universe that she created that didn't exist until she took the initiative to pull it out of her mind and put it on paper. And all that she created in that universe was really special. And especially like I was one of those. I think I was maybe 13 whenever it came out, but I was still hoping for my Hogwarts letter to come, even though they usually come.
Did you have a scarf and everything?
Yeah, I was like, maybe mine was just going to come a little late. People look out for owls.
I mean, when you think of what you wrote, which is a beautiful book, and you think of J.K. Rowling and the amount of pages, and that she had to conjure up, is that like?
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame, that writing the extent of that universe. And I do spend a lot of time thinking about how far the Stellas universe could go. This is just the kind of the first entry point into it, but there's a million different directions that it could go, and I'm excited about the endless possibilities. In some ways, it's intimidating because it's, you know, this particular story now, for the very first time, belongs to me, and I get to decide where Stella goes, you know, and where the dinos go when they go into space, and where do the storylines go, you know, what does book 2, book 3 consist of, and how far do I want to take this, and is this like the focal point for me, this Stella universe for the next decade, you know, or is this like one children's book and then I'm headed towards something else? It's exciting, intimidating.
I definitely believe that there's more stories for Stella, you know, and that's got to feel powerful for yourself too, you know, that you have that power to do that with the characters you created. You were a former teacher. What did you teach?
I was a high school math teacher. But side note, by the way, I don't think that Desi is going to be able to join us because of the particular, what was the conversation we were having earlier about time zones and how.
Yeah, that is so funny. Okay.
Yeah, we had just got it.
No worries.
About how difficult time zones can be. She fell victim and said, "That's at 3, right?" Nope, that's at 10. I think she,
okay.
Crying off out of the shower as she was texting me. So, but no, I taught high school math in Dallas, Texas. I taught geometry my first year, which I hated geometry in school. I hated having to teach geometry, but that was
even imagine geometry.
No, nothing pleasant about it. Trying to teach kids that it's like worthwhile when I didn't find it worthwhile myself was really a struggle. But and then moved up and followed my kids up and taught them algebra 2, which was really an incredible experience and like humbling. I learned a lot from them as they hopefully learn a lot from me.
That's awesome. You mentioned, you know, Stella's your first book. When did you first start writing? I know you mentioned that you've written countless songs.
Yeah.
But a song is a story, but is that what you've written, or have you, before Stella, is there another story hidden away in a box somewhere? You know,
there actually isn't another story that I've created before, but it was more when I grew up writing. I would grow up writing poems, and every Sunday of Mother's Day, I'd be in church like, I didn't get mom anything. Let me write her a poem real quick, you know. And I'd write like a Mother's Day poem on the pew and go home and type it up and put like a clip art on it, you know, of like a mom and son. And it's still framed in my bedroom, like one of these about my mom and a garden and God, and we're her flowers and she's the gardener, like something like that. And these, I would just like crank them out quick so I could get her, you know, something for Mother's Day. And then whenever I was a senior, I took piano lessons all my life growing up, started playing guitar my senior year of high school, and wrote some songs. Initially, they were kind of like church songs that I was writing, but then I wrote this one song about Louisiana and swimming holes and big trucks, and played it for my friends. And I was like, and they were like, loved it. I was like, okay, I see. People really like songs that are about them. You know, that's what people really want to hear. So I started writing country songs. You know, I grew up in Louisiana. I was a country boy, country music, and was writing in college, like performing in bars, country songs.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So all of the writing kind of, I think the central theme between them is the rhyming scheme of it all, you know, like writing poems for my mom, writing songs. I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift and her ability to take words and twist them and create rhymes and create, you know, feelings and atmospheres with just a few words that are very like impactful.
T-Swift in our home, but yes, I agree. I mean, she's a storyteller. I mean, there's no doubt. Do you record the music you sing that you write?
Yeah, I do. I actually have a friend, and part of, you know, my trajectory, I went a lot of different places before I got to LA, which I'm sure we'll cover. But I always wanted to land in LA because I wanted to be around people who had similar passions. You know, I'd gone this like lawyer route, and I never, you know, I knew if I'd stayed in New York or wherever that was going to kind of be the extent of it. But I felt like if I landed in LA, even if I was doing the legal things, I could move closer to that industry and find people to collaborate with on things. And that worked out. I have a friend named Bart, who's a vocal producer for, you know, some big pop star girls and me. It's like his collaborations are like Selena Gomez, Peyton Gulley, you know, like nothing.
That's great.
Yeah, so we become songwriting partners, and we spend a lot of time in the studio recording songs. Well, I think we'll finish some and put them out for sure. It just, you know, the pandemic slowed things down a lot as far as collaborations go. And then Stella has taken the front seat to all things creative. When I'm not at work, my time's, working on this book. So I'm working on those alongside. They're equally as important, but Stella got the boost.
Stella got the boost. But I was going to say, if there's not a place where people can find music today, but hopefully soon.
No, I mean, if there is, I wouldn't announce it,
Not yet. You're not ready.
They might be able to stumble across like some old YouTube videos or something, but they're from a long ago.
Well, it's amazing that you can, follow your passion. One thing that I always, you just said about the fact that you play piano, I find that to be one of the most beautiful instruments, because I feel like you can walk into any room and change the mood in a second.
Yeah. That's totally true. Unfortunately, you can't carry your piano around with you. So which is what led to me picking up guitar. So I was going to college and I was like, I don't want to stop playing, but I can't bring a keyboard to my dorm room. And also sitting around the campfire with friends or, at a party or something, it's hard to be like, hey guys, pull out your keyboard and start playing. But if where you're going does have a grand piano,
you're right. But that would be something. Carry it there. That's for sure. Well, I think it's time for you to talk about your book and tell us about where the idea stemmed from.
The book has been a very, very long time in the making. I think I wrote the first draft of Stella and the Dinos in 2015, 6 years ago. So I just graduated law school and I just moved to New York City. And like you said, I had the background in songs and that kind of writing, but I had been sketching this little dino astronaut. There was a friend on Instagram that I'd been flirting with, and he had, that's basically it. Oh man, I wish that I had brought around I still have the initial sketches, but my sketches.
Keep that. That's a book down the road.
Yeah, there you go. It's a keepsake for sure. But mine looked like cows with long necks and bubble helmets on. That's why I didn't illustrate this book. That's why Desi got to be the illustrator. But I'd sketched this little dinosaur astronaut for a friend, and then in the process, moving to New York, I'd gone to see. I was really into going to the musicals there, and I went and saw Hamilton, and was so blown away with Lin-Manuel Miranda and this, back to what I was saying before, this idea, this universe that he created, of song, story, and start in it. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. I want to get in the game. I don't want to just consume all this content that makes me feel this way. I feel like I'm capable of producing content that will make people feel this way. And I knew that for me, that would be the ultimate joy in my life, is to be able to produce content that is that meaningful and impactful and makes people feel that good. And so I set out to do that, and via the path of this dinosaur astronaut. And I thought, how would a dinosaur astronaut come to be? Well, they must have seen the asteroid coming and took off into the sky on a rocket. And so I sat down in my law office. Don't tell them that, or they'll claim ownership of the book. In front of my law computer, and typed up the first draft of Stella. And it was one of those things where when it happens, it just flows out of you, right? And it happens all at once. Sometimes songs happen like that. Sometimes they don't. But when they do, you're like, oh, this is something to pay attention to. This is something I need to invest time in, because I knew from a story perspective it was going to take a long, hard time to develop, having never done it before, to develop a book out of the story. But I was confident enough in that first draft to say I want to commit myself to this. The very first draft was about a dino dad who saved only his family and took his family off because no one else would listen. He's like, the asteroid's coming, no one listens. So he just took his family off into space, and then all the dinos die at the end. And the first feedback I got was that was an unacceptable model for a children's book. None of the dinos indeed could die at the end. They all needed to live. I'm like, well, how would all the dinos fit in a rocket? But then one might ask, how would a dino even build a rocket? So you have to suspend disbelief in the first,
for sure,
in the children's book. And I was also told that a children's book character needs to be a child, experiencing things that children experience. So, and all that feedback came from the process of me, sending that first draft to everyone that I knew. And New York, I knew people who worked in publishing or at magazines, and ended up at meetings at Harper Bazaar or something, the editor, because her husband wrote children, weird connections of people giving feedback, oh, your rhyming scheme needs to match. It doesn't match here. All the dinos can't die at the end. The lead needs to be a kid. And so I took all of that and refined it over a year into what it is now. And we had an agent take it in New York for a year and shop it around. But nothing came of it. So I took it back to LA when I came here, I called the agent, said I'm taking Stella with me to LA to see what she and I could do there. And I always had the sense that the real path forward for me was to do it myself, to kind of fully develop the project on my own, and just like get my hands dirty with it. Like I didn't want to hand a draft off and just have a publisher create it and put it out. I wanted to like really be involved in the creative process. And so that's how it ended up working out anyways.
And did you set out rhyming was always going to be the way you told this story?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's like I don't know that, it doesn't even resonate with me at this point to write a story that doesn't rhyme, because I think I think the telling of a story when it rhymes is such a different experience for, a parent, for a kid, for the reader. It becomes almost musical in a sense. It's not a song, but it reads with a cadence and reads with a particular vibe that doesn't come through necessarily if stories aren't rhyming. I think the rhyming scheme is part of what's special about my story. Yeah. Where other people do other things really well. I think that rhyming meter is like important to how it lands.
And did you take a writing course that helped, or were you just gifted with the gift of rhyme?
I wish I had taken a writing course. That probably would have been a little bit helpful. And not trying to just have to Google everything and figure it out myself about this whole process. But I haven't yet. I think I might, though. I think that like after this, like completing this project and this is like not my last project I'll produce. It's just the first of many, but getting it done and out there has given me the sense of confidence of, oftentimes we're waiting for permission to do things, and then I get to a certain age, and that's probably what happened with Stellas. Is like, no one's going to tell me, Peyton, now it's time for you to write a book, like that. I have to take it upon myself and just do it. And the same for like, maybe it's a screenplay, maybe there's a novel, out there. I think there's a lot more to share. There's definitely more in the Stella universe to share. But even beyond that, I think taking creative writing courses is in my future.
When I read Stella, I absolutely saw like, this on Nickelodeon, they could totally create that universe.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, and it's interesting because I even still feel like prone to own that process, and a lot of friends have been like, hey, let me connect you with this person at such and such studio, or one of my friends before I even hired the illustrator to start the process was like, let me introduce you to Sony, and like set up a pitch meeting at Sony. And I had such a negative feeling going into it because I'm like, the story's not ready for that. This isn't like, I don't want to give this story to someone
one
else.
step at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. One step at a time. It's really a phased process of, and I giving Stella to someone else to create would have been, I think, an ultimately maybe lucrative process, but a disappointing process for me as a creator, because I put so much of myself into Stella. Like I said, it was a dino dad that then became a dino kid named Simon the dino scientist that saved all of the.
Stella's a great name.
And at the end, in the very end, right as I'd hired this illustrator, my illustrator Desi, who is female, obviously, and like I just got this sense that like there was just a more compelling story to be told about a young girl dino, and that would maybe resonate even more with the illustrator, because she could put herself as well into this character after I had done the same. So there, like I said, climbing up in a tree and reading books, I was like Stella as a kid. Just spent a lot of in the book it says Stella spends a lot of time looking in the stars to see if she can catch a glimpse of Jupiter or Mars. That's kind of how I felt in my hometown, sitting up in my tree, and want kids that do spend a lot of time thinking to feel really confident that that's like okay, that that's like a good thing. If they don't necessarily play sports, and they just spend a lot of time thinking and questioning and learning, that there's a lot of value in that, and you can be a hero, through that. And so whenever I decided it was gonna be a girl, I was thinking about other names that start with S, 2 syllables. And a friend of mine had told me previously about his niece that is a thinker. She's like 10 or 11, loves dinosaurs, wears a dinosaur onesie to bed, wants to be a paleontologist, and he'd always worried that that society was telling her that was kind of for boys, like dinosaurs are for boys, and she rejected that wholesale. And I was like, wait, Daniel, what did you say your niece's name was? And he said Stella, and I was like, that's it, it's Stella, Stella.
Oh. Because that might be Daniel who's watching right now, because Daniel said, I know some little kids wanting more Stella books.
It definitely could be that Daniel watching right now. He's a very, very supportive friend.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's where the name of the book came from. And
lucky that little girl's a lucky Stella.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. She's a brilliant.
Did you pick up, when you decided this was the story, did you, go in a bookstore and sort of, flip through some children's books?
I did for the illustrations. So that was the feedback from Desi. Would tell you now if she was, here.
Well, let's start first with, how did you meet Desi Moore, your illustrator, and pick her?
Yeah, Desi's a brilliant graphic designer, artist in Los Angeles, lives in Silver Lake, and a mutual friend of ours that they worked together at a trailer company where he made movie trailers and she made movie posters. She still works, her main job is making.
I'm putting up her website if anyone wants to check it out.
There you go. So she makes movie posters, she makes CD art, and she at the when I wrote the first draft that I was so excited about 6 years ago, my friend Billy put me in contact with Desi, and here I was like this lawyer in this tower in New York doing M&A stuff, and I'm like, I think I have a good story here, but like someone please validate me, because I can't do it myself. And he sent it to Desi, and she said, she said I want to do this. She said, I've been presented with 5 or 6 different children's books and always said no, but this resonates. Like I see it. I want to do this. And that was so meaningful to me as like a first time writer, and just so validating that I'd always had the sense that it would be really special to work with Desi on this. But then, like I said, I described the process of 5 years or so passing by of me refining the story, trying to shop.
So you and Desi have been working on it for 5 years together.
She hadn't worked on it for 5 years, but we connected on that first draft, and she said, I want to do this. And to which I said, it's not ready for that yet, but I'll get back to you when it is. And so fast forward 5 years, and I got ready to run a Kickstarter to raise money to fund the illustration and printing. And I sent the revised draft. I was like, is this something you still want to do? And she said, absolutely. So that was how I got connected with Desi. I mean, I shopped around and looked at like different folks in Brooklyn or New Orleans or wherever, just on like Upwork and stuff. And I was like, God, maybe I could save some money or, whatever. But like, this just feels right. She lives down the street from me. She's been interested in Stella from the beginning. And if she's as like passionate about this little dinosaur as I am, and, this story of her saving the dinos and taking them to live in space, and then that's the person to work with. So there was no question.
I'll ask more about Desi in a minute. Was space something you were always fascinated with as a kid?
I don't, not particularly space. It wasn't like I had an obsession with space. It was more so science. I was very much like a math and science kid, and the space aspect came around, very roundabout through this like dinosaur astronaut design that I landed on, and how they would get to space. But interesting now is like, since writing it, I've become more taken by space. I look out in the stars and it's a lot more meaningful to me having written this story and thinking about about the dinosaur species taking off into the stars, and the parallel about like our species that's like trying so hard to take off into the stars and find new places to explore and to live and to see. And I think there's definitely timely parallels in those two stories. And a dad that pre-ordered the book and got a copy, he said now his little girl knows the names of the planets, is interested in space. And
that's definitely, I noticed that from, looking at the book is, it definitely is going to teach them some great, things that they'll remember because of Stella, Yeah,
I like that.
Stella will lead, who knows, to a young, boy or girl, working at NASA because of you.
That's really special. I really appreciate that.
What did you think, when Desi emailed you or sent you that first draft of, Stella? What was the first piece of art you actually saw? Was it Stella?
Yeah, it was an initial design of Stella, which it's funny when I receive things, I'm always I'm rarely am I like, that's it, wow, I'm very like measured in my response. But with creative people, like every second that goes by without a response is like,
yeah.
And I feel that too. If I send a book,
their heart is sinking.
Yeah, I'm like, so what do you think? What do you guys say? But ultimately, I think she had nailed it, and we definitely iterated off of that initial version of Stella. Talking about what is her attitude. How does she show up to people? how big is she? What kind of dinosaur is she? But she still looks a pretty good bit like that initial dinosaur that shows up. But now she's shifted into the little test tube holding. She was always holding a test tube from the very beginning. But
you have to text me at another, when you're done. I want to, take a picture of the original your drawing. I want to see what you.
God. Well, it's a long ways from that.
I want to see. So self-publishing, what would you say has been the hardest part?
Every part has been the hardest part. Because it's self-publishing, but it's also the first time I've started a business. There's the retail website, StellaDino.com, where you can go and purchase it. Yeah, and go and pop that up there. But there it is right there, right? So it was like doing it all myself even just creating the Kickstarter was a effort into itself. I went on Kickstarter and looked at the first video I saw, which was not a good reference video. I learned.
Oh, so you did a Kickstarter for Stella at the beginning?
Yeah. In 2018, I ran a Kickstarter and raised like $20,000 in 3 days because of, again, the support of my hometown. I'm in Louisiana and a few close friends who were just super generous and believe in me and are supportive. I'm so lucky to have the people around me in my life that give me, from my parents who give me the confidence to believe that I do have a place to take on an effort like this, to my friends who support it and make it happen. But if you'd have seen the video that I made first for the Kickstarter, I don't think, actually one of my friends slammed his laptop shut, was like, no, this makes me not want to give to this campaign. I was like, what are you talking about? I have to launch this. I have a deadline. And they're like, what deadline? It's your project. There is no deadline. Your only concern should be making the highest impact launch into the market that you can. Like, this is the first thing that people are going to see from you as a creator, and you don't want it to. It was very much like this. Hi, I'm Peyton Gulley, and I want you and the rest of the world to know the dinos are alive and well. It was like a terrible commercial. So I went back with the help of an actor friend who put me on a screen and asked me some questions, gave me a shot of whiskey to help me loosen up a little bit.
That always helps.
It definitely helps. And so I'm very proud of for the
That's awesome. I love that's why I saw it on Instagram that you were doing this. I think it's really great. People need help along the way, and it's great that you're able to tell the story. Are you already thinking of other adventures for Stella in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking about who Stella is in this book and how that carries forward. And my hope, the way I perceive Stella is that she's very brave, she's very curious, she's very kind. I just want to carry that forward and hope that whatever comes next, it continues to just bring joy to families, as they read it, or friends or adults, whoever's reading it. And also, just give confidence to kids around being curious, being kind.
That's the perfect, the way you, I think, put this book together, it's like the perfect book for a parent to be, I see it in my head, and, they're sitting on the bed with their child reading it together.
I've seen it, and it's been the most amazing thing. I've gotten, I sent out 250 copies through the Kickstarter, and then however many sold in the pre-sale. And now that they've started landing, friends will post, like my friend Daniel posted a video of his nephew reading it, or my friends will post their kids sitting next to them reading this book, and a kid's face like pointing at Stella, and excitement. Yeah. I can't believe it's kind of unbelievable that it's gotten to this point. And I hope that more and more people, I want to share Stella with the entire world. I think that she's a very special dinosaur. I think the story is exciting, and I know that times are, difficult right now. And if people can find joy in just this simple story,
that's what you said. It is about, finding joy and making people happy. So my last question is, because I did see you post that picture of that pallet arriving at your home with your book.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like?
I mean, I'd been waiting for so long for it to get there. At first, it was also just a little stressful because I was like, wait, my house is not a warehouse. I don't live in a warehouse. What am I going to do with this pallet of books? But also it's so hopeful, just like looking at it and being like, she's here. I can finally share this with the world, and people only plug into this, like the way that I've gotten so much joy for the past 5 years in developing this story. Like, now it belongs to every single person who buys a copy. Like, the story belongs to them, and in their lives, what they do with it. Someone sent me a message on Instagram. It was like, this is the first of like generations who will read this book. And that just like really like set my heart on fire. That's such a spectacular.
It's true. I mean, like, you know, mother or father reading it with their child, and, you know, more passing it down generation to generation. Peyton, I wish you the best of luck. It's been so fun chatting with you. And everybody go to stellathedino.com for more information and to purchase your copy of the book.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Alan. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye. All righty. My next guest, Akila Jeffery, is another attorney and another educator just like Peyton. She splits her time between Northern California and Mason County, Washington. She has taught students at all levels from kindergarten to college, and in addition to teaching, she worked as a columnist writing for the Sunday Morning News in her hometown of Oakland, California. She began to write illustrated stories while she was a student at UC Berkeley, and later authored a story for a class assignment at Vanderbilt University Law School that became known, which I'm going to ask her about, by fellow classmates as Tiger Kiss. Her book, Wilda Silva, Secret Keeper, is her first published novel. Please welcome to the Locker Room, A.A. Jeffery, author of Wilda Silva, Secret Keeper. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Thank you so much for being.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm excited to be here.
It's so funny that both, you know, two new children's authors, both lawyers, both teachers. What does that say about?
Yeah, well, I guess
smart people.
Well, thank you. I like to think that. I think being a lawyer, you have to learn to get good with using words. So maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Lawyers are wordsmiths for sure, right?
Yes, definitely. You know, I knew how to write a story when I was a lot younger, but law school forces you to be able to tell a story to lots of different people. If you can reach a jury or you can reach a judge with your client's story, you could win the case. So it really forces you to fine tune your ability to be a storyteller. And so some of the best lawyers are really great at telling stories. And I remember growing up and admiring like Jerry Spence, like, oh my goodness, he's such a good storyteller.
Were you an avid reader as a child?
I was. And I used to read a lot of storybooks, and I would read a lot of mysteries, Agatha Christie, for example, and dive into some of the classics, Ellen Montgomery, and some of the others. So yeah, I did enjoy reading a lot, and also art. But I did not pursue art professionally and get to the level where I needed to be, and that's why I needed an illustrator.
For sure. Is there a book that had a large impact on you as a child that you remember?
I loved Anne of Green Gables. I mentioned Ellen Montgomery, but Anne of Green Gables, that whole series, the idea of sort of the this girl who was a little bit of a misfit, misunderstood, and came to charm her community, and also her having been an orphan. I think she had more of a struggle, and I always liked stories that had a little bit more of a challenge for the characters. And so I like seeing personal growth as well as just a good story. So I used to love Anne of Green Gables.
And then you wrote Tiger Kiss at school.
Yes.
And was that the original name? I don't think so, because you said it was.
No, it became known as that. So it's kind of an embarrassing story.
Okay.
But no, we can go there. We can go there. So yeah. So and my one of my law school classes, our professor had an assignment where we had to. He gave us a scenario and he said, write about this scenario and then analyze the legal issues in the case. And so I didn't realize at the time that maybe I should be doing creative writing as opposed to focusing on legal briefs. But I started out writing about the scenario, and then and I sort of built up the story at the beginning of this little boy. And the professor said used the scenario of my son, my kid, walking to an attractive nuisance, and there's a tiger behind a fence, and my kid gets into the enclosure and gets eaten by the tiger. And it's an attractive nuisance because you shouldn't have a wild animal on the street, even if it's behind a fence. So I wrote it, but I thought, well, I don't really want to write about my professor's child being eaten. I do want to pass this class. I didn't want to fail the class because I wrote some gory stuff. So then I thought, okay, well, this is what I'll do. I'll have the little boy. He walks up to the tiger, and it's going to be a Bengal white tiger, and exotic. And I gave the tiger name. I said the tiger's name is Nikita, and the little boy reaches out his hand, and the tiger scratched him. And so it was a bad scratch. And so then I go from there into the legal analysis. Mm-hmm. And then, to my shock and embarrassment, our Professor Yu at Vanderbilt University, he read my story to the class, and everybody was kind of laughing because it was kind of funny. Funny. And I was just, but he didn't say the name of the person who wrote the story. So I just kind of wanted to hide. You were
slinking down.
I was slinking down. I didn't know how to handle it because nobody had ever put my work out there, and so I didn't know really how to handle it. But then I was just going about my business one day, and some of my law school colleagues said, hey, they were mentioning the story. Oh, that was so funny. And Professor Yu's class, Tiger Kiss. I said, what? And they said, oh, and yeah, he read the story. I was like, oh yeah, I wrote that. They're like, you wrote Tiger Kiss? I was like, yeah.
Is that what gave you the idea to write this book?
I thought maybe I might be pretty good at it, but I focused more on law as a career, but I couldn't hide the fact that there was just this little storyteller that wanted to come out, and I was always working on little things, and then I just kind of always put it on the back shelf, and you do the career you're supposed to do. I'm a serious attorney. I'm going to be fighting for justice, and so that's what I was focused on. But then I had like kind of a lull because I don't know, I'm a little bit of a fantasy nerd, a little bit, or sci-fi fantasy nerd. So one of my favorite TV shows is called The Orville.
I don't know that.
And The Orville, I think it's a Seth MacFarlane show.
Okay.
Seth MacFarlane.
What's it on? Do you know what it's on?
It was on Fox, and now it's going to be streaming on Hulu. So there was like
recommend it?
Yeah, well, I loved it. I think it's hilarious and it's fun. It's exciting. I love it. But my show is my favorite show, and it went on hiatus. So then I was like, okay, now what? I guess I'll write something.
Wow.
So
with
then I
so much
started
television out there, you decide to write something. I love that.
Yeah, I couldn't find another show that I really liked, so I just started writing, and that's the story that came to me. Yeah, Wilda Silva.
Well, yeah. Well,
yes.
Tell us about the where it came from.
Well, Wilda Silva, by the way, you can check this book out at wildasilva.com, and also
I'll request it up in a second.
Request it at your local libraries. But yeah, so this story came about because I tend to pull a lot of things from my life. And so some of the characters were inspired by actual people I know or have known. So I have Wilda, and I was thinking of one of my coworkers who has red hair, and I thought, you know what, she's kind of reminds me a little bit of my coworker. As I was writing, I was like, that's kind of cool. I think I'll I'll have somebody in a story like her, and she told me like about like some of the challenges that she faced growing up, being different, a little bit different. And I thought, oh yeah, so we're definitely this girl. Wilda's a redhead. We're gonna do this. And so that's how I came up with Wilda. And Wilda lives in the Pacific Northwest, and I have experience living in the Pacific Northwest. I love that whole area. And there's a street called Elfendal Pass. Well, it's a road. It's not really a street, but it has this mystical quality to it when you're riding on that road. The way the sun goes through the pine, the needles of the trees, the evergreens, and it just has this sort of fairy magic to it, and it's called Elfendal. And so that kind of got me thinking of
that's the name of the street.
Yes.
So interesting because that's such just hearing it for the first time sounds mystical, magical. It doesn't sound like it's a street I would see. It sounds like it's out of the universe, such as Wilda. It doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like the places in the town of Belfair, Washington, I spent a lot of time in that town, and so I thought, oh, this is just a perfect setting for this story. And the other characters.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time at the Hood Canal, right, in Washington State. Yeah.
Yes, the Hood Canal, a beautiful, beautiful area, and it's so fresh, clean, natural. And unspoiled, and a lot of nature, but also there's like a pretty decent sized town there as well. So you're not totally isolated, but if you want to get lost from the world, you can definitely get lost in that area. So
well, and don't we love to get lost in our stories?
Yes. You can just drive out there. You can just drive in Mason County and absolutely just be the only one out there.
Well, you in the book, Wilda's talent as a flutist attracts the interests of the world of fairies from Africa, Asia, and Scandinavia. Was it important for you to have different representation and cultures within your story?
Absolutely. So in a lot of fantasy stories that I remember growing up, there was not a whole lot of diversity. So I didn't really see myself in a lot of the stories, and I didn't see my friends, So in this story, the Chaichana sisters are Thai, and one of Avery's friends is African American, and there's fairies from other cultures. And as I was studying fairies and the mythology of fairies, of fae people, I found that there were fairy stories from all over the world and stories of sprites. There is a Native American legend of like what would be considered a sort of water spirits or sprites in the Southwest. And so I have a queen who, she's a Native American fairy sprite, water sprite, who lives under a river in the story. And I thought it was really important to have diversity in Africa and the Benin area. They also have a mythology around fairies. They call them Aziza fairies. And I also found that there's this history of elves in mythology in Scandinavia. So I took a little of this and a little of that. And also Australia has some mythology that's similar. So I just threw a lot in.
It sounds like such a mystical universe you created. I know you also mentioned that there's it isn't all fantasy. It covers other themes of multiculturalism, struggles with addiction, and general hardship that are embedded throughout. Can you talk about some of the themes you tackle?
Yes. So like a lot of young people I've known and just people in general, they have struggles with alcoholism. I think that in a modern story, that if you're going to tell a story to someone who's 12, 13 years old today, I think it's important to be current and to reach them and their experiences that they're going through. So yes, Wilda does have to deal with addiction in her family. But at the end, you know, it's like she grows and she learns from it, and they're able to work on those things. And I think it's important for people to know how to reach out and ask for help if you're in that type of situation. So I hope that this character and her strength and the lessons she learns are able to help young people who are reading the story.
That's amazing. You mentioned earlier, you know, that you had to find an illustrator because you don't have that creative side. Before we bring out your illustrator, how did you go about finding one?
Well, I put out the call. I was looking online and I was trying to find an illustrator and put out the call. And Nassima Amir was the person that I clicked with. You know, she just really understood my vision for the visuals of the book. And so it was just perfect.
That's awesome.
I'm really glad I
Nasima,
got to meet her.
Good, and I'm looking forward to bringing her out. Nasima Amir is a freelance illustrator and junior concept artist. She grew up in New Caledonia and currently resides, I believe, in Quebec, Canada. Please welcome Nasima Amir. Hi, Nasima.
Hello. Hi, Alan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
You.
Do you remember what you know, when A.A. came to you with the story, what you first thought? Did you visualize it?
Actually, I was really surprised because it was a very lucky encounter, in my opinion. Like, there was a lot that I could really get along about with Akila, and also I can really relate to the character of Wilda because, well, I had the same curly hair, as you can see. Yeah. And also I play the flute. So wow. the character Wilda plays the flute and the piccolo. So I can relate to that.
Well, that's kismet right there.
Yeah. And I was also always passionate about fairies. Like as soon as I was a kid, like I loved fairies. So I've always tried to draw fairies. So I really like clicked directly with the book. So yeah, it was a pleasure.
The illustrations are beautiful, and not only that, your website,
yes.
This one,
yes.
the art station, there blew me away. There are some incredible things, characters and things up there. And you know, I'll put the other website up as well. People should check it out for sure. Have you illustrated any books prior to this? Was this your first?
Actually, I did illustrate one other book before. It was more of a coaching book, but very how to say, very esoteric. So the cover had to be really fantastical, actually, like full of fantasy. So it was not my first time illustrating something like that. Of course, I also illustrate for video games and card games. So
yeah, if you look at that, if you look at this website, you know, it looks like video games.
Yes.
Was Wilda the first character you tackled?
Actually, yes. The first character that I really got to know, let's just say that, because I drew a lot of characters before, of course, but it's the first one that I really like managed to know.
Well,
like
sorry,
I read about
I meant for the book. Was she the first one that you?
Oh yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, she was the first. She was the main character, so obviously I got to know her first, along with Avery, her best friend. So yeah, it was really fun to draw like two very different characters, because Avery is like way more of a serious character. He's really about managing school, and like I had to draw these different expressions, think about how they would look, how they would feel. Yeah, it was really interesting.
A.A., do you remember getting, you know, that first visual of your characters, and you know, what was the reaction?
Yes. Yeah. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was blown away. So yeah, I asked Nasima for just the cover, and I was so blown away by that cover, and I was like, oh yeah, you know what? We need to have illustrations inside the book because this is so good. So yeah, I was so
initially
excited.
you weren't even sure that you would have illustrations in the book, but because you loved the cover so much, you asked.
Yeah,
Oh, what a
that's it.
great
Exactly.
idea! You know, that's
Yeah,
and
it's so beautiful.
you know the difference. Like the first author, Peyton, that I had on, his book is more about the illustrations. Yours is with, you know, the story in between. And now knowing that you didn't conceptualize it as an illustrated book, how did you decide which parts sort of to have Nasima illustrate?
Well, I went back and I rewrote some things. I was like, oh, now that I know
Wow.
I want to have illustrations, this is so good. Let me write some stuff in here about like, you know, some things that would lend for more illustrations. So yeah, I did go back and make some edits so we could get those in.
Oh, I love that.
Actually, I remember that we worked together a few times, like to talk about a few scenes because we both weren't sure, like if we had to modify the illustration or if she would like to modify the book. So yeah, it was a lot of communication work.
That's amazing. Are you self-publishing this as well?
Yes. So yeah, I decided I'm just going to go for it, you know, because I wanted it to be a series, and Wilda Silva is the first of this series.
I love that.
And everybody says, you know, if you traditionally publish, then there is no guarantee you're going to get the series. Your publisher might decide just put out the one book and that's it. And I thought, no, this is a universe that needs to live. This is a story that has to continue. And so I just decided, you know what, it's going to be best for the story if I go ahead and do this. So yes, set up the publishing and got to work.
That's incredible. Nasima, did you study art in school?
Yes, absolutely. I studied in France. I used to live in France. So I studied for 3 years in an illustration school, like dedicated to actual illustration. But before that, I also studied 3D art. So yeah, wow. I'm very versatile.
If you know, I don't know that I'll ask this question correctly, or they're illustrations, and in my mind, it's sort of like, you know, I worked at Disney many moons ago when they were still doing some things with, you know, pencil drawings and not all computer. Are you doing it by hand, or is illustration today basically all done on a computer?
So it really depends. The book cover, for instance, I made it all on the computer, but the illustrations inside, I drew them on paper because the character of Wilda is supposed to draw herself the illustrations. So they're actually like sketches on a paper. So I wanted to get the feeling right and to like really show the texture. So yeah, I do work on paper. I also made the bookmark.
A.A. The fact that Wilda sketches, was that added? Oh, is that a Wilda bookmark?
Yes.
Wilda,
oh, I love that. That's great.
It's the first sketch of the bookmark that I made on paper.
I love that. That's so yeah. Very smart idea. Very smart idea. A.A., I was asking, is the fact that Wilda sketched some of those things herself, was that added because you realized?
Yes. Yeah, I realized that I was so impressed with Nasima's art, and I thought, you know, this just makes sense. And so I thought, let's have Wilda sketch a lot of these things as her memories, because in the story, she was doing some, she was collecting things, and she was, you know, jotting things down in like a journal, but I thought it would make sense if she also sketched some of the things that she sees in the fantasy world. And I needed Nasima to be able to draw well, but make it also believable that an 11-year-old girl would do this. And so it was like a tall order.
It was a real challenge for me too, yeah.
Yeah, but
Like,
you delivered.
You have to like take your talent backwards, you know, to when you were 11.
Like, how did I think about drawing when I was just 11 years old, you know?
Yeah,
it was a bit of a challenge, but it was fun. It was really fun, actually.
And you got the little doodles and the little, you know, things that an 11-year-old would include in a sketch. And from my teaching experience, I knew what to look for, and so yeah, you did a really good job on that.
The bookmark, do you get it when you purchase the book, or is that going to be something you're putting out next?
So that's a promotional for people who are interested in getting the book right now. We are willing to throw in a bookmark if you want to head over to wildasilva.com and if you order one of the paper books, one paperback. Yeah.
Nassima,
and then after that, you can purchase it. After the promotional, you will be able to purchase it.
That's great. Everyone loves a good book. You need a good bookmark. You know, you really do. When you're still reading an actual book, you need a good bookmark, not a digital.
And that bookmark is in color, by the way. So Nasima was showing the sketch, but it's in color. It's really nice. So yeah, you should get one at wildasilva.com.
Nasima, I was reading that you love to be part of a project that, you know, where you have the possibility to conceive the elements of a new world. Was that sort of the excitement for Wilda Silva?
Absolutely. I really love like coming up with the visuals of a different world. That's why I love fantasy in general. It's like always creating new things and imagining how they would look if they actually were in the world. That's why I work like mostly realistically. I try to really create them as though they were in reality. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you watch? Do you have a favorite show or sci-fi or yourself?
I have a lot of favorite shows. It's a bit hard right now. I'm very into The Handmaid's Tale, but that's not very much for children. But I was talking earlier about Anne of the Green Gables, and actually I absolutely loved the show Anne with an E, in the same kind of like colors, and so I thought about it too when I made the cover.
That's great. A.A, do you have your next Wilda story in mind already, or have you started?
Yes. Yes. So the story does continue, and so as Nasima pointed out, Wilda plays the flute, and that's one of the cool things about Nasima, because she understands what that looks like and what that's like, and she's able to incorporate it into the illustrations. So Wilda continues to develop as a musician, and she gets a chance to go back to that magical world. But there are some conflicts, and one of the main conflicts is about humanity. What is the relationship and the tension between humanity and this realm, this fairy realm of these fae creatures, and what are their thoughts on some of the things that humanity does and has an impact on them without humanity always knowing about it. And so Will is going to be in the middle of that.
And that's the next story.
That's the next story, yes. And also you'll get to see Avery too. Avery's back, and Avery's going to be coming into more of himself and his power and learning more about himself and making some big decisions.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Really exciting time for both of you. And I just love that you're self-publishing, you know, your own books. Everyone can go to wildasilva.com to purchase your copy. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure speaking to you both.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Have a great day.
Bye, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget, check out Stella at stellathedino.com and wildasilva.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the Locker Room, you can do so right below and turn on the notifications. I want to thank Peyton Gulley, A.A. Jeffery, and Nasima Amir for being here today. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.